Hello, I'm Tom Sinclair. I am the, what would you call it, the head streaming idiot today. And we are in streaming idiots. We're still in alpha shows. Well, I was hoping we could get to beta shows this week, but we're not. We're going to talk about our new PC build, and we'll get started with that one. But this music just makes me happy. I just had to, give a real good example of the idiot in me. I can't help it. It's, streaming is a real passion. It really is. You can go overboard with it. You can spend more money on it than you should. You can spend more time on it than you should. But I think it will bring really, really good rewards, and I'm sold on it. And I'm glad you've tuned in. For those of you guys that are tuning in live. Delighted to have you guys here. Couldn't do it without you. And for those of you that are watching on YouTube, thank you. We hope you'll subscribe to the VidBlaster Guy channel, which is where you're watching us now, and keep up with all the shows. We are currently still in the alpha shows, which means we're not polished. We're not ready for prime time. We're still working out bugs. Got all sorts of graphics to build, and eventually we'll get into the beta shows where they'll be a little bit more polished, and then we'll be ready for prime time. Maybe we'll be ready for prime time by summer. Who knows? Been working on a couple of PCs recently, my monster PC builds, and really excited about them. The client drove down from Michigan this morning to pick them up, and was just I think he was thrilled. This is Nick Davidson. And Nick and I had a great opportunity. We spent a day together, working together on the PCs, integrating his cameras and his Blackmagic video hub and some of the other toys that he brought down with him. And it was just a ton of fun. And we made some great discoveries along the way that made his future life with these PCs a lot easier, because he brought cameras. We were able to hook them up live and get them configured and say, okay, how does this work with VidBlaster? How is it going to work in real life? And we made some important discoveries about the hardware so that we could get it all worked out, ironed out. And then we sent him on his way back to Michigan this morning with these two monster PCs. I mean, hex core processors, overclocked, crammed with RAM, solid state hard drives. I think the PC that he's going to be using for instant replay had 7 hard drives in it, one for each of the 7 cameras that it's going to be supporting. And then the streaming PC that's also going to be doing the ISO recording on the cams has, I think, 5 hard drives in it. We probably need to ship him a couple more to bring that one up to spec. But it's a ton of fun. If you're interested in a custom PC build, I'd be happy to chat with you about it. Tom at vidblasterguy.com is the best way to reach me. VidBlaster is our streaming software of choice, and I'm a VidBlaster reseller, so I'd be happy to talk to you about that too, if that's what you're interested in. You can definitely build a PC cheaper yourself. You can definitely have a local guy probably build it for you. But if you want something that's designed intentionally for streaming and has got the benefit of somebody that's got a ton of experience behind it, me, that is. And keep in mind, a lot of my experience is not book knowledge or the fact that I do this like I'm in the broadcast industry, but it's been streaming since before streaming was popular. Our first streaming job, we took an old webcam. It was probably standard, probably 320 by 240 resolution webcam. I don't know, maybe it was standard definition. And we duct taped it to a tripod and said, okay, here we go. And we broadcast. And we didn't have graphics. We took a clipboard with a piece of paper on it and wrote the score of the soccer match in magic marker and held it up in front of the camera where everybody could see it. It was primitive, but it caught on. People loved it. And I realized the impact that this whole technology is going to have, not just on our local communities where we can do local community events, but really on the whole world, where we can reach beyond the borders of our town, our state, our region, our country even. And I give a lot of thanks for the guys and gals that watch us from all over the United States, but really from all over the world. We've got folks that watch us. I mean, today is Wednesday in the U.S., but I've got people that are watching me tomorrow. I mean, it's Thursday where they are, and it's early in the morning, and they're watching, and we appreciate all of our Australian viewers. Thank you for tuning in. And, and we got our European guys that are staying up late, too, so we're not going to leave y'all out. And, of course, all our crew from South Carolina. Yeah, we appreciate those guys as well. We had a great PC build. We built 2 PCs, and they were intended to be connected to 4 Canon XA25s, which the Canon XA25 has an HD SDI port on it, so it's equipped for broadcasting. And what we found as we were going through that is that the desired resolution of 720, and this was 720 progressive, so it was full frames, was actually being sent from the camera to the PC at 60 frames a second. Now, VidBlaster accepted that and displayed it beautifully, but we had trouble storing it, and we had trouble with the replay, and it really wasn't until we were about halfway through our configuration time that we realized that the camera was sending that, and we thought, that maybe it was sending it at 60 frames a second interlaced, which would be the equivalent of 30 frames a second of data, but it wasn't. It was a mess, and the camera didn't have an option to send. As Martin Kay pointed out earlier, there is no 720p 30 frames a second standard. It's a 720i standard. So anyway, it was a good deal, and it was fun to go through that. In the process of that, and this is kind of the hardware part of our little story today. On the instant replay PC, we had 2 Blackmagic DeckLink quads coming into one PC, so that gave us 8 high definition inputs, which the computer didn't have a problem with, VidBlaster didn't have a problem with, especially once we realized that we were sending way too much data at 60 frames a second of progressive 720 video. Once we chopped that back to 30 frames a second, and by the way, it was VidBlaster that was able to do that. A little process allowed it basically to just process every other frame of video instead of every frame of video. So we cut it back to 30 frames a second from 60 frames a second. But one of the things we realized, the design for instant replay was that we were going to take these cameras and we were going to temporarily store their video on a disk drive. And we were thinking that we could get 2 cameras of 720p 30 frames a second on one hard disk drive. Well, it didn't take long before we realized that wasn't going to work, because it was even at 30 frames a second, it was still, as opposed to 60, it was still way too much data to, it was a bottleneck. It just, if you've been on the interstate and it goes from 4 lanes down to 2 lanes, what happens? The traffic stops, and that's what happened here. And so what we said is, we need more lanes, essentially. We got to have more lanes. We got to open up more lanes so the traffic can get through. And the way we did that was we said, okay, we're going to go from 1 camera to 1 hard drive. And that worked real well, but motherboards only have but so many SATA ports. And this one in particular had, this is the Asus Sabertooth X79 motherboard. Really sweet motherboard, really like it. And it's got 8 SATA ports, but the recommendation on a pair of them, they were 6 gigabit SATA ports. A recommendation on a pair of those ports is that they shouldn't be used for data drives. I guess you would use them for a RAID 0 array for your operating system drive, for example, if you wanted to do that. So we basically had one of them connected to a solid state drive, and then the other 7, 2 of which were 6 gigs, and 4 of which were, the other 6, 2 of which were 6 gigs and 4 were 3 gig SATA ports, were available for data. And we had 5 hard drives hooked up to 5 of those 6. And then we realized, what we really need is we really need 7 hard drives so that we've got one for each of 7 cameras. And if we have an 8th one, we'll just let it dump its temporary file onto the solid-state hard drive. There's enough headroom there to do that. But the problem was we didn't have enough SATA ports on the motherboard. Okay, sometimes you don't always come up with the best solution right away. And so my first solution was, we need a motherboard with more SATA ports. Find a motherboard with more SATA ports. $400. Oh my goodness. There's got to be a better way. Well, I'm looking on a forum and, talking about the motherboard with the most SATA ports. And then somebody on the forum asked the question, why do you need to do that on the motherboard? Why not just add a SATA controller card, a PCIe card? And I thought, there we go. So this was, I guess, Friday of last week. The client's going to come down. He's going to show up here Tuesday. This is Friday of last week. So I get on the internet, go to newegg.com, newegg.com, use them for a lot of my hardware and software purchases, and found a SATA card. It is a SYBA, I guess, SYBE-SY, and the model number is SYPEX40039. Make a note of that. Don't ever use it. If you're SYBA, call me. We got to talk. It's a PCIe 2.0 SATA 3 6 gigabit controller card. Handles 2 drives. Put that card in an available PCIe port. Yes, sir. Just pop the top off the case, unplug it, let everything power down, get kind of stable. Put that card in an available slot, plug it back up, fire up the PC. No boot. No boot. It says something like, insert media into the boot drive or press any key to continue. So I press any key. Same thing. It's like the operating system hard drive has just gone missing. It's like somebody unplugged it. So I'm thinking, okay, maybe I need to read the directions. So I read the directions and it says, take the top off your PC, unplug it, and put this card in. And once it's in, then install the driver. I think, okay, maybe they got the sequence wrong. So I pulled the card out, PC booted, installed the driver, turned everything off, put the card back in, turned it back on. No boot. No boot. In fact, at this point, pull the card out, and of course I'm powering it down in between. Pull the card out, put everything back together, no boot. Tried every trick I knew, no boot. Pulled out the solid state hard drive, which was the main drive, put it in another PC just to check it. Everything's there, but it's not going to boot. It won't boot. And finally, after way too much time, I mean, this was supposed to be one of these 5-minute tasks. You put the card in. Once the card in, you get it configured. You plug in your SATA ports. You get your hard drives ready to go, and you're done. 5-minute job, right? 5-minute job. Like an hour later, after trying all the tricks that I possibly could, and maybe somebody here in the chat room can say, well, Tom, if you'd just done this, it would have fixed it. I'd love to hear that. I really wouldn't love to hear it now because it's already done, but I'd like to know for next time. But when all was said and done, fortunately, I had on hand some spare SSDs just in case I needed them for something like that. And I basically had to rebuild that section of the PC, put in a new solid state hard drive, install the operating system, install the motherboard drivers, install the video drivers, update that with 120 updates from Windows, and that was just the critical updates. That didn't include all the optional updates. So there's another hour and a half. Here's a post in the chat room. It's like, hey, Tom, welcome to the world of IT. It's a 5-minute job. Yes, sir. It won't be long. That was the case. But I mean, I can laugh about it now. But then I was spitting, just spitting. So Syba, SYBA. Bad news, bad news, bad news. They are getting a bad review from me on Newegg, and I'm sending that card back. You're like, Tom, how much did you spend on that card? Well, I spent $28, but it was only for 2 SATA ports. I mean, give me a break. Shouldn't it work? And, you know, and I had it overnighted here because I needed it right away. It arrived the day my client was here, and it was going to be a 5-minute job. 5-minute job. Okay, enough of that. I was frustrated. What can I say? I was frustrated. I mean, it did way much more damage than it possibly should have. Just one of those things. One of those things. That's the way life is, though, sometimes. And you just never know when one of those negative things rolls around. You know, my wife says a lot of times when she gets delayed by something, and so she's ended up later getting from point A to point B in the car, she said, you know, maybe in the great grand scheme of things that I was delayed because if I'd been there on time, I would have been right in the middle of that cement truck. But since I got delayed, I missed it. And so maybe it's not so bad to be delayed. So maybe something happened there that comes out and works to our advantage. I know that I had a great time with Nick. He's a super guy. The name of his company is Mitten, Mitten Video. They're up in Michigan, and they're going to be doing live streaming and recording, and from the racetrack. There's a short, what they call a short track there's a paved track there, and it's got a jumbotron, so they're going to be using VidBlaster to send a stream up to the jumbotron, and then send a stream pay-per-view out to the internet for folks to watch, and then of course have video on demand later, and produce DVDs later for folks that want to just pop it into their DVD player, and they'll have the instant replay on the jumbotron as well as everywhere else. And then they've got some great ideas where they're going to take some wireless cams and go down to the pit area and have interviews down there in between races, and they'll put that up on the jumbotron. And then they've even got a wireless camera that will go inside of one of the cars. Now that's going to be cool, and it will it'll go around the track, and they'll pick up the signal and bring that video into the broadcast. Nick, among other talents, back before it was popular, was taking taking a part out of the Wii controller, a gyroscope of some kind, and using it to build a multi-propeller helicopter like you now see commonly referred to as a drone. And he was doing this years and years ago before it ever became popular. And he was attaching cameras to it, and he was sending them up in the air and doing aerial photography with this before it ever became big. And then the FAA outlawed it. He was out of business, and so he got into a different video business. But it's Mitten Video, so you may want to look them up online. We'll try to post some some URLs in the show notes for this, so you can look up and see what Nick's doing. It's going to be a lot of fun watching how they have all sorts of success with their new venture in racing. So that's kind of some bits and pieces about our recent PC build. It was a lot of fun. It was interesting, and this is the first time I've ever done this. It was interesting to have the client actually come visit and bring the equipment and say, okay, let's sit down and let's make sure that everybody is on the same page. Let's make sure that my stuff works with your stuff. And at one point, I remember a couple of days before he came down, he said, should I bring my cameras? And I said, yeah, you may as well. And then, good thing he did, because we were able to discover that there was this 60 frame a second send that we were only counting on 30 frame a second send, and we were able to work it all out. And had we had to do that long distance by telephone, it probably would have taken a week, and probably I would say a factor of 10 much more frustration on both our parts. than to be able to sit there in the same room at the same time and both of us agree of what the problem was going. Yes, it was an SDI camera. It was a Canon XA25 that we had set to send out 720p video, and couldn't find a 30 frame a second setting on it, and it couldn't send out 720i 60 frames a second. That wasn't an option. It had a 1080i and it had a 480i, but it didn't have a 720i. It had a 720p 60 frames a second, which was more than the spec that we were shooting for. So fortunately, VidBlaster had a frame rate multiplier that allowed us to essentially cut the frame rate in half. Good job, VidBlaster. Good job, VidBlaster. Coming up in future episodes of Streaming Idiots, we want to have some guests on. And if you would like to be a guest and come talk about what's going on in your little part of the streaming world, would love to have you. I've talked with several of our regular viewers in the past about coming on as guests, and I think, folks, well, we're getting up to the point where now is the time. Let's come on and talk about some fun things that you're doing. We can try them out. We may not be able to sit in the same room at the same time, but we can sure take a look and work through some things. I think we talked last week about the Skype TX, the new Skype that's there for broadcasters. Keep an eye on that one. That one's coming down the pike. It'll probably be the end of the year, first of next year, and you'll probably have to write a check for 20 or 30 grand. So probably never mind. Just we'll keep an eye on WebRTC as a way to be a great way to pick up video and bring it into your broadcast. If you're broadcasting, your church activities or your church services, I'd love to hear from you about what you're doing and how you're doing it, and maybe you would consider coming on the show sometime as a guest to talk about how you're doing it. I have a real passion for that, and I think for churches it's a natural. It meets a lot of needs. One is it meets the needs of those folks that are either sick and can't get to church for a Sunday or two, or folks that are infirm and are not going to get to church anymore until they come for their last service. And it's a great way for them to feel like they're more a part of the community, because they're probably feeling really, really isolated. And what a great service to the body of the church to have somebody that says, okay, I'm going to take a Sunday and I'm going to take my laptop or my iPad and I'm going to go visit so-and-so during the church service, and I'm going to show them the service on there, and we can sort of worship together in their bedroom or in their living room, because they're not going to be able to make it. That's a great ministry and definitely worthy. For folks that are traveling, to be able to keep in touch with what's going on in their home parish and not miss the message, the word, the sermon for the Sunday, I think there's value in that. And then there's always what I call the snoopers, the folks that have just moved into the community and they're looking for a church. And, it's kind of intimidating sometimes to go into a church. Big churches maybe not, because you can get lost in the crowd. But if you like small churches are, I think, in a lot of ways more intimate, because there are fewer people and you can't get lost in the crowd. So being able to watch a service that's being streamed live online, or one that's being recorded so that you can watch later, it's a good, safe way to answer the question, is this the kind of place where we might feel safe, where we might feel welcome, where we might feel like this could be our home without feeling threatened by going into a strange environment? And so that can be a real great benefit to folks. I also say there's a fourth way, and that kind of works into two different ways as well. One is for folks that used to live in your town and used to be a member of your church, and now they live in another state or maybe even another country, and they long for their good old church home, and they long to hear their pastor's sermon and maybe catch a glimpse of some of their friends. That can be a real service for them. And then there are also folks that they never found a church home wherever they are. And maybe they just stumbled across your church services video on demand on YouTube, or they stumbled across your church website and they see that you're streaming live on Sunday mornings at 10 o'clock, and they say, hey, it's raining. I'm not playing golf today. I don't have anything better to do, so I'll watch this. And maybe that message that you guys have will reach out and grab a heart. And I'll tell you, when I talk with my buddy Al Bunt at Good Shepherd Church, who does a lot of streaming, they have folks that don't live in their city but are members of the church now because they're attending services online, virtual services every week. And that group is growing, and they feel a part of what's going on. And it's a virtual relationship. Granted, it's not as good as the old flesh and blood, personal one, but it's better than nothing at all. That's the other standpoint. So I don't know how I got onto that little soapbox, but I really do believe there's a great opportunity for the worship community to take things outside their doors and outside their boundaries to the rest of the world, and you'll be surprised at the result. If you need some help with that, call and let me know. I know a lot of folks that would love to help. Some folks will do it for just the gratitude of it. Some folks charge a fee, and definitely, you get what you pay for. But if you're interested in finding out about how your church can do this and have an idea of what a reasonable budget might be in order to do something like that, drop me a line. You can use my VidBlaster address for now, tom@thatvidblasterguy.com, tom@thatvidblasterguy.com. And I'd be happy to chat with you about that, maybe over the phone, maybe just by email, and begin to move you in that direction. That's a deal. We can do that. That'll be a lot of fun. And I can already see here in the chat room that Al has said, always, Tom, I can help with that. I'm free on Wednesdays. My next task is promotional videos to advertise our live streams. All right. Good job, Al. And Al says that they definitely have online-only members. Well, that's cool. There you go. The proof is in the pudding. Proof is in the pudding. Thank you, Al. Glad to have you. We'll have you back on again real soon. And if you've got a subject that you would like to hear more about streaming, maybe it's hardware, maybe it's software, maybe it's a combination of the two, or a particular way that something's going on, and it's a question, shoot that question to me. I'd love to answer it to you directly, tom@thatvidblasterguy.com. And I'd also love to use that question as a kind of a prompt for discussion here on this show, because you just never know when you ask the right question, suddenly you get a different answer. And sometimes the hardest thing is asking the right question. For example, somebody's asking a question in the chat room, and they're saying, audio ground loops? Well, that's close to the right question. We just need the rest of the question. What do you mean? What do you mean? Don't know. That concludes this exciting episode of Streaming Idiots. I'm Tom Sinclair, the head idiot. Delighted that you could show up with us today live, for all the guys that are in the chat room. Hey, Dave's there. Dave, when did you slip in? I didn't see you come in. And for those folks that are watching on YouTube, we'd love to have you come join us. We're live on Wednesday afternoons. We're right after that VidBlaster guy. He's on at 3 o'clock Eastern, 8 o'clock in the UK. And it depends on whether it's daylight savings time or British summertime. The time may be an hour one way or the other if you're watching this later on. But come join us live. It's a lot of fun, and you'll meet some great folks in the chat room. So until next time, I will see you later, and keep on streaming. Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Plus, you get really cool music that you can have. If you're watching live, hang around, okay?